Now we have this wonderful, beautiful, fantastic, professional, polite email that you can send to your professor. Hi everyone, welcome to DARI TV, where I bring the classroom to you. I'm Hannah John, and today I'm going to talk about how you can write a more effective email to your professor. Effective emailing is a practical tool you can use in your professional career, but also in your university and graduate school life. So today what I want to do is to share a template that you can use and start practicing right away. So if you're a student of mine and you happen to see this video, beware. For today's video, I'm going to assume that you have an email that requires an action, but for all emails, I will say that you should probably stick to the 3 Ps. Please be professional, polite, and patient. So the first point is actually to make sure that you're emailing the right person. I received more than a handful of emails in the past, emails that were actually intended for another professor. Part of the issue is there might be professors very similar or maybe even the same names within the department. And so please do make sure that you're emailing the right person before you start. A second tip that I'll add here is, I don't think this is an issue for most of you, but I would also check your own email address. And I know email addresses give you a chance to be much more individualistic and maybe share some of your own style. But I did get emails in the past from people named Cookie Monster or Cute Angel or something like that. And as wonderful and amusing as it is for me, sometimes I actually thought it was spam. So if you haven't already, I might choose an email address that reflects you as a professional in the university and graduate school space and is an email that you can also use in your professional career. The next step to writing a great email is to make sure that you write a proper subject. This should be not only professional and polite, but it should also convey the gist of what you're trying to send. I'll show you the difference between some generic subjects like hello or hi, compared to those that actually require an action, which is the purpose of today's email. So now we're going on to the main body or main text of the email. And here, just as I mentioned before, where you should make sure that you're emailing the right person, please make sure when you start off the main part of the email that you're addressing your professor or your advisor or your instructor using the correct titles. A kind of foolproof way to begin the email to any one of your professors would be Dear Professor somebody. But I'll show you in a sample how you can expand upon this. Now that you've addressed to whom you're writing the email, it's your turn to introduce yourself. This is an essential part of the email because it gives us, as the reader, a clue as to whom we are dealing with and how we should respond. Especially if this is the first time or one of the only contacts that you've made with this professor, I would go all the way, first name, last name, as well as student number, and even tell them your major. After a brief introduction of yourself, you're going to go right into the purpose of writing the email. And again, for this particular example, we're looking at emails that require a specific action. And so it's critical that you lay out very, very clearly and logically, professionally and politely the purpose for this email and the type of action that's required. When you're sharing this requested action, it's very important that you make the action itself clear and also by what type of timeline the action should be taken. So for example, if you say something like urgent or ASAP, that doesn't really help to put the email into context. And so I'll look at an example where you need a signature by a certain date. And then by providing this date, you give some clear guidelines or guideposts for the reader to take the appropriate action. And as you move towards the end of the email, you're going to give thanks in advance. Thank you for reading this email from beginning to end and not deleting the email or putting the email in spam, but also to thank the reader for the request that will be taken care of in the future. Now, a side note I will add here is sometimes, even if you ask the professor to get in touch with you by a certain date or to do something by a certain deadline, sometimes, for one reason or another, your professor might be unresponsive or might not have taken care of the request. If this is the case, although I said to be patient, this might be the time to gently follow up with another email to remind him or her of the request that you have asked for. So all of this has been pretty hypothetical so far. So what I want to do right now is to give you an actual real-life example of an email that I received in the past, or kind of like a template of emails that I've received in the past, and maybe compare that with an ideal email that I would recommend students to write. So this particular email is taken almost word for word. I received these emails in Korean, I receive these emails in English, so very global. But I think it'll serve as a good contrast to the ideal email that I'll be sharing with you in just a little bit. So why don't we read this email together? So the subject over here says, hello. Hi, hello, greetings, and so on. I've actually received some emails where there was no subject in the title. It literally said, parenthesis, none. Please don't do that. So then we get on to the actual email itself. And so we start with the greeting. Hi, Mrs. Jun. Tisk tisk. NG. No good. The issue that I have with this is technically it's not correct. When you're emailing your professor, the safest way to address your professor is actually to say professor. But let's keep going with this email. So this is the body of the email. I want to register for your course, but the course is already full. If I'm not able to take this course, I won't be able to graduate. Tear, tear. You. Can I get your signature for this? Get back to me soon. No signature. So what were some issues with this particular email? Just everything. Starting with subject, greetings, no introduction of the student. Again, we try to be professional, polite, and patient, and we have perhaps 0 out of 3. And also, and this might depend on your professor, I have a little issue with emoticons used in this context. I'm actually a fan of emoticons. If you receive emails from me, I have the little smiley emoticon and the little squinty eye happy emoticon. But when it comes to an email in this context, especially when we don't know each other very well, the impression that I get is actually that you're trying to make me feel guilty. I don't like to be made to feel guilty. So what might be a better approach to writing a similar email and assuming that you want to apply for one of my courses? For example, International Business, Theory and Practice. Why don't we go through this together? The first step, of course, is subject. And for this subject, we will have something like permission to register for course number, in this case IS 404, International Business, Theory and Practice. That is the full name of the course. And the great thing about this title is I know exactly what this email is going to be about. And so I'm prepared mentally, emotionally for the email that's about to follow. Now we'll have our greeting. Dear Professor so-and-so. And in this case, actually, I want to make a point here. It's quite interesting. I don't know if it's in Korea, but I've also received emails from those who are not Korean. But there's this habit of writing the first name for the email. So for example, I get many emails that say, Dear Professor Hannah. I actually think it's kind of cute. Very cute. But in practice, actually, it's incorrect. So you should be using the last name. So for example, in this email, it would be Dear Professor John, comma, or colon. Colon is incredibly formal. I tend not to use colons even in mine, but either one should be just fine. And the next item in this particular email is, I hope this email finds you well. Oftentimes, I get things like, the weather's very nice these days. Or, I hope you're staying healthy during these very difficult times, especially with the COVID-19 pandemic. These are all very nice salutations and greetings in emails. I would try to keep this introduction as brief as possible so that we can get right into who you are and why you're writing this email. So here, we start with I am, first name, last name, student number. And I think especially if you haven't had a lot of communication with your professor, this is a great way to start your email so they know exactly who you are. So here we continue with the email. I'm a master's student in international business at ABC University, and I was hoping to register for your course. And of course, the course name here is IS 404, International Business, Theory and Practice. If you remember in the previous email, the student had written something like, if I don't register for this course, or if I don't take this course, I won't be able to graduate, tear, tear, sniffle, sniffle. Again, guilty feelings on my part. In this particular email, what you do is that might actually be the case, that you need to take this course to graduate, but it might be nice to provide a little bit of context as to why you would like to take this course in particular. And so in this particular email, we write, I have a passion for this area, whether it be international business or related fields. And based on the syllabus you provided, I believe you'll be able to share a great deal of insights on this subject. How beautiful. So if you compare the before and the after, from the reader's perspective, certainly the latter makes me much more open and entreats me to react much more positively to the email. So let's assume that at this point the professor is very open to allowing for an additional student in this course and will agree to sign your forms that you need to submit to the administrative office. So what do you need to do now? You need to let the professor know by when the form should be submitted and to whom and in what manner. So here in this hypothetical email, you would write something like, should you agree to allow me to register for the course? I was hoping you would let me know the best way to receive your signature from you. This could be virtually, in person, during the first day of class, or during office hours. And so here what you're doing as a student is asking for the professor's preference in terms of how best or how most conveniently the professor can get back to you with the signature. Now here at this point, this is the most important part. By when does this action need to be taken? And so you as a student can provide some sort of boundaries or guidelines or due date as to this particular request. And so in this email, we write something like, based on our university's guidelines, I would need to submit the signed form by the second week of the semester, and you can actually state the due date. So it gives the professor an idea of by when the signature should be submitted. So at this point, your professor should know who you are, why you're writing, that you're interested in taking this course, that you would need additional documentation, a signature, and that signature is required at a certain date. Now it's up to the professor to respond to this email. And so here you can just add another little friendly note. I appreciate your consideration and look forward to hearing from you at your convenience or earliest convenience. Again, we want to make sure that the action is taking place within the due date, but you don't want to be rude or pushy. Lastly, as I had shared earlier, here you would want to provide thanks in advance. So literally you can say, many thanks in advance, comma, your name, your first name. So now we have this wonderful, beautiful, fantastic, professional, polite email that you can send to your professor. Thankfully, I do receive lots of emails that are in this fashion. You're all very strong in terms of netiquette. But I did want to review this once again for you and for the sake of myself as well. I can't wait to receive your fantastic emails going forward. And until I see you again here on DARI TV, bye!